Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to EDBA 861, Becoming Data Smart. In this video, we're going to introduce you to some of the big picture elements of this course and go through a few of the distinct features that you can plan to look for. First of all, talking about the big picture goal of the class, the goal is to expose you to a lot of modern methods in applied business research. So we're going to have a series of methods that you may choose to use for your dissertation, or a series of methods that you may use professionally, depending on the context, or perhaps both. And we're going to go through what the methods are, where they are used, a touch of theory, and then how we can implement and interpret them. The goal of this is going to be very distinctly not theoretically oriented. Some of your reading, especially that from the textbook, will relate to some theory. However, the assignments in class, the lectures, and the performance assignments that you'll be implementing, we'll talk about that in a moment, those are not going to be theory-based. With that being said, we will discuss theory in the context of interpretation. So theory is important because it tells us what's going on and lets us then determine how we can actually interpret those findings. So without theory, we actually don't know what our analyses are doing and what arguments they're supporting. But through the theoretical context, that's how we can then interpret the results. So the class isn't going to be completely devoid of theory, but again, that's not the emphasis of the class, and theory will only be presented in the context of interpretation. As far as other pieces with the course coverage, we ultimately are going to be looking at things from a pretty big picture view. Each of the topics that we'll talk about in this class have an entire course that could be associated with them. And it's not a bluff, that's a genuine statement. In fact, many of these I have taken entire courses focusing solely on. So it's important to acknowledge that, because the structure of this class will be to have a different topic for every class meeting. So weekends where we meet twice, we'll have two different topics that we're covering. Weekends where we meet once, we'll just have one particular topic that we're covering. Now, to facilitate some of this, and we'll talk about the workload in a second, I have attempted to join like topics so that we're learning about similar things on weekends where we double up in sessions. But it's important to realize the length of time dedicated to any single topic is going to be relatively minimal. Probably just enough time to get that big picture view of what is this particular thing, what does it do, and how can I interpret the results of this type of analysis. And of course, we'll go through how you can actually run the analysis yourself as well. Now, I've mentioned the textbook previously. The course textbook is a very valuable tool and one that you'll use throughout the course. There's a lot of things I don't like about this textbook, and I frankly do think it's a bit theory heavy, though we do lean on that at times, so it's not that you can ignore the theory sections. Those are actually very important, but it is a bit more theoretically heavy than I would normally have you do if I were writing a textbook from scratch. With this said, the reason I continue to come back to this textbook for this particular class is within every section that's covered, at the end of that section, the textbook has not only multiple examples, some of which we'll work through as part of our in-class participation assignments, but it also has a full APA write-up of how you would write those results in a research paper, such as one that you would be required to do for your dissertation projects. And any further research you do, and of course, actually any private reporting. We say research papers and kind of look at them as these extra things. Research papers have the level of rigor that they do because that tends to be what's required to read and interpret the results. And that standard of information is very usable in a more pragmatic or industrial context as well. So whether you're in academia or industry, I think that having that guideline of how you can report the results is extraordinarily useful. I can't overstate that. Frankly, I've never found another book that so systematically addresses that, especially with high-level concepts, because frankly, these can be hit or miss to report. As well, we have some SPSS output that we see in there and some SPSS code that's available with this and the data sets. That's really useful. I do too like that they present output from multiple software, as you within your organization may or may not be using SPSS as your preferred software. SPSS has costs, and not every organization is willing to bear those costs. So being conversant in multiple softwares, focusing on the analysis and the results rather than the specific software implementation is a good skill to learn and something that this textbook facilitates well. Finally, I think within this textbook, it's important to recognize that it has a broad scale impact on the field in the sense that this is a very well received and heavily cited textbook. This isn't a textbook that's really going to sit on your shelf. And if you cite it, then no one is ever going to have heard of it. In fact, we'll be reading several articles through the course of our readings that we'll talk about in a moment, where those articles cite this textbook. And you'll just have to believe me, Scout's honor, that I did not intentionally seek those out. That just tended to be what happened. And I say tended to be, it's not the majority. It might be maybe 20 or 30% of the articles cited this textbook. But, you know, in a completely random sample, that's a pretty heavy density to cite a single statistic source. In fact, that's extraordinary. So this is a textbook that's widely used and widely cited in terms of the methodological advice that it gives. And it's important to have at least one of these in your back pocket such that you can pull this out if you have to implement one of these analyses and utilize this, perhaps with the aid of their example write-up, within your own research, and then be confident to cite this as the source as to why you did what you did. So all of those things are things that I like about the textbook. The textbook is by no means perfect, and we'll have some articles that accentuate some of the imperfections, even theory imperfections within the textbook as fields continue to grow. But there are many things that I do like about the textbook, and those are some of them. I mentioned software, the SPSS software. Our main software we'll be using this class is SPSS, not because it's better than anything else, and quite frankly, I professionally tend to use a different software, one called R, but because SPSS is a good balance between analytically rigorous and easy to use. So we have lots of options, but it's also really easy to access those options. So there's some easy access ones. You know, everybody has Excel, but it's difficult to do some of these advanced components within Excel. With that said, R can do everything. Python can do everything. SAS can do everything. But you have to learn coding for those. So SPSS falls somewhere within the middle, and right now, how the course is formulated, we use SPSS as part of our analysis. That said, SPSS can't do everything. And to fill in those gaps, we'll be using a software called AMOS, A-M-O-S, which is associated, it's also an IBM product. So it's associated with SPSS, and ideally should be downloaded on your computers. I have a feeling I'll be getting some emails if that's not the case, but I believe it should already be on your machines. And if not, we'll be getting those downloaded through the semester so that you can implement this. That will be near the end of our semester, not for the beginning. So you don't need to worry about it right away. All right, so let's close out this welcome introductory video with a discussion of the course structure. We've talked about what we're going to be covering. We've talked about the textbook. We've talked about the software we're using. Now let's talk about how the course is going to be structured. In this course, you'll have a series of assignments associated with every particular topic. So the assignments are broken up into 3 categories: preparation, participation, and performance. Preparation is ultimately the things that you do beforehand. Participation is what you'll be doing during, and performance is what you do after the fact. So for preparation, you'll be having a lot of reading to get up to speed on the topics. To supplement that reading, I've also gone ahead and recorded a series of videos, of lecture videos with slides that you'll also be looking at to get a picture of the topic as you're preparing for the course. for the class, our class meeting. So in preparation, you'll have articles, you'll have videos that you'll be watching, one of which being this would be maybe a preparation for a course instead of a particular class. For each class, that is for each specific topic, I think you'll have between maybe 2 and 4 videos each, anywhere between 20 and 45 minutes, talking about the different topics as it relates to that particular the different components as it relates to that particular topic. And I hope they're helpful in explaining some of the things. It might be the case where you do some readings, you watch the videos, and then you go back to the readings after you've seen the videos. Maybe it helps some things make sense and you can review that. All of that should be done before class. In addition, you will have an assignment associated with your preparation. So for one of the readings, it'll be probably in the middle of the reading list. Those reading lists are typically provided in order. Intentionally so. I try to give the ones that explain the concepts and then the ones that use the concepts so that you can see them in action and understand all the things that are going on. And hopefully all taken together, after you're done with that, you feel much more confident, even if after 1 or 2 readings you're still on the fence. So that's the goal. Somewhere in the middle, about the transition between kind of understanding, about the transition between getting the articles that talk about what we're doing and getting the articles that work into application, you'll have an article that's associated with an article review assignment. So for these article review assignments, the directions change slightly between topics. So some topics may have, no topic will have more than one. Some topics don't have any. So for instance, in class, we'll be pairing 2 topics on a weekend. It might be the case that only one of those topics has an article reading assignment and not both. Sometimes not. So be careful with that. The directions will change slightly, as I was saying. For some of them, it's going to incorporate an article review and then an article reflection. So where you summarize what the article author said and then where you reflect on what you think about the article with a couple of potential prompts to help prime the pump. For some, it'll be a little bit more specific in terms of the questions, reflections, and summary that you're supposed to be implementing. So please be careful to read the directions and don't just assume that all the directions are the same for each article review assignment. These article review assignments are to be completed prior to the dissertation weekend. I think the due date is the midnight on the Friday of the dissertation weekend. As you complete these, specifically any summary components of that assignment, please make sure you are being careful to use your own words in summarizing. I highly, highly recommend reading a good read through the article, maybe even a couple of times, really feel like you know what they're talking about, then set the article aside for a while, maybe an hour, maybe a day, and come back and write your page or 2 summary. Again, look at the tasks required by the assignment. But write your summary after reading the article, after taking some time away, to make sure that you're not reading through the article and then typing out with those same words what that article is saying. The summary is meant to be your summary, and I really want to hear you summarize what happened in that article. If you have to go back and say, oh, well, they talked about this concept, I can't remember the name of what they named that factor. I can't remember the which of the variables were significant, or what the most important one was. I might write in my summary while the article is put away, this variable was extremely important and it actually really shook up everything. And then I might have to go back after I've kind of written my summary and see, okay, what variable was that again, so that I can drop that name in and reflect on that appropriately. But again, if I'm having to read the article and then type, that probably means I'm doing the article reflection in a way that's not consistent with the expectations of the assignment, where for the summary, you are supposed to be summarizing from your perspective, not copying and pasting components. And if you do need to copy and paste a section or something like that, make sure it's within quotes. It's almost never appropriate. Almost never. There's a couple of cases I can think of, but truly almost never something you want to look at doing. So anyway, that's our class preparation That's our class preparation component of the class. So with the class participation component, there's going to be an assignment that we work in together. So as you are preparing, you're going to be working through a lot of the content. And then during class, we're going to be working through implementation. So we're going to, because you've prepared and are familiar with the concept walking into class, now we're going to talk about how do we use it. It's going to bring to light some applied questions that we'll address during the class period. And then we're going to give you a large chunk of class time to work on the class performance assignment, or excuse me, the class participation assignment. So the class participation assignment is, God willing, we'll see how it goes. It depends semester by semester, but hopefully going to be half or even more of the time. So maybe 1 to 2 hours of the time of our class together is going to be working on this particular assignment. Part of the rationale for this is to make sure that you have the opportunity to start working through this on your own and run into many of the issues that are involved with advanced analytics. By doing this in the class time, as opposed to once you're home, you're going to have the opportunity to ask those questions in person where we can get those addressed right away. To that end, the class participation assignments are going to be, you're going to be able to work with a colleague in class, if you'd like, to address those. And actually, that type of work is encouraged. Not in the sense that you do one write-up and then you share it together. That's not what I'm talking about. Everybody's going to be working on this on their own. But if you have a question, lean in and ask a classmate. That's the goal of being able to work on this in class, is that we can address each other's questions together so that you can actually build up your knowledge, skills, and capabilities regarding the methods that we're going to be studying. Finally, we have the class performance assignment, and this is the goal. We're working through everything to get up to there. Our preparation is making sure that once we're in the participation stage, we have the fundamental knowledge base so that we can start working on the implementation and be able to ask questions in a way using a common vocabulary that everybody can understand. And then after we've spent the class time building up our abilities, we're going to set you free and you're going to be implementing one of these performance assignments. These are going to be done on your own and are intended to demonstrate your ability regarding the particular statistical method or topic. Within that, you're going to have a particular task to complete. And as part of that task, it's going to be a little bit less directed than some of the previous assignments were in the sense of, and then the preparation or participation assignments were in the sense of, you're going to be expected to make the decisions that need to be made. And you're going to be expected to know what decisions have to be made regarding each of the different topics and components of that particular statistical method or topic. So within these class performance assignments, this is, again, where you are really showing your mastery of the content. I think in our class grade, they're weighted a little bit more heavily because of this. But really, they're the main assessment. You can think of it as our class projects, except we'll have one per topic or an exam, but it's not in an exam format or anything. It's really just an applied example that I want you to work through and demonstrate your ability regarding the methods with. And ultimately, that's the structure of the class. Some preparation work to get up to speed, some participation work to kind of work through some of the issues, hopefully work out the kinks and bugs in class, answer any questions that you have, and actually trying to work through one of these things so that you are all prepared to really show your best self and to give it your all in that performance assignment where you're kind of showing off this new skill that you've learned. And that's the course. That's what we have set up for you. So as always, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm always happy to answer. I absolutely advise you continue to explore our Canvas page. And a lot of this information, again, is available in the introductory section of the Canvas page or the welcome section of the Canvas page. But if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. And otherwise, I will look forward to seeing you in our first class together. Welcome to EDBA 861, Becoming Data Smart.